This is Tony Warner, and you are listening to the Fulham Focus podcast.
Fulham.
Hello, welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name is Matt Boisclair and I'm here to discuss our second defeat in a row, this time to Preston at DEEPFAIL on Tuesday night. The week just gets worse too, as the club have been charged by the FA for failing to control their players for their reaction to the penalty decision that we didn't get at home to Bristol City on Saturday afternoon. Joining me to talk it through, firstly, is Moncton FC's number one. He's our very own Father Christmas with his bulging sack full of stats. It's Matt Arter. How's things, Statto?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good too, mate. Thank you. Also joining me, fresh from polishing his red nose, he's the Rudolph to Statto's Santa White Christmas. It's Focus stalwart Matt Baldwin. Good evening, Baldo.
Evening. I was wondering where you were going to go with that intro after you introduced Statto with his sack full of something, but you didn't go down that route, so I applaud you there.
The innuendos are I almost did. It took a rewrite last night, I tell you. Anyway, let's have a little look at the defeat to Preston.
Fulham.
Right, lads. So before we go any further, let's just talk about that FA charge. Statto, did you see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, as pony as the ref was, the players did kind of get on his back, and the FA loves defending like the refs. So we knew it was coming, but you know, it's one that we can take on the chin because the players had the right to be so annoyed.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Baldo?
Somewhat surprised, mainly because the night before during the Preston game they announced that the referees board, or whatever the phrase is, had basically issued an apology to Fulham, basically saying, yeah, we got that wrong. So the fact that we then get charged afterwards for basically complaining about what should have been given, even though whoever is in charge said we were right to complain, is just a little bit weird. I was expecting it because of the way the players reacted, but a bit surprised that it came.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and this sort of thing goes on every week, and it's just frustrating when it happens to us, but you just would like to see the officials held to be more accountable when they get things wrong like that, because players are passionate, especially at that stage of the game. But anyway, let's put that to bed. Let's talk about Preston. So there were two changes in personnel from the side that lost to Bristol City. And to be honest, Don Love wasn't too wide of the mark with his left field idea in the pod earlier in the week, as there were a few surprises. Joe Bryan was left out on the bench as Denis Adoy moved to left back. Cyrus Christie played right back, and the other change was AK-47 coming in for Tom Kearney, who was reportedly ill again. I'm not going to ask you what you made of the lineup, as it was a change around anyway, soon after kickoff, what happened. But what was your first feeling when you saw it? Baldo, you said you were scared just before 7 o'clock when the lineup was announced.
Yeah, I was mainly scared by the fact that Josh Onomah was playing, and he came in for a lot of stick. Some of it quite rightly, some of it quite wrongly. In the chat, sort of both before the game and as the game was going along. So I was just worried by the fact that Onomah was starting. If I'm being brutally honest, because I'm not the biggest fan of him, and he had some good moments during the game, but he had a lot of bad moments as well. So I think I was quite rightly justified in being scared about him being included.
And Statto, I know you're not Onomah's biggest fan either, but what was your feeling? Were you confident when you saw that lineup?
I was a bit confused, to be honest, because it didn't help with the type of graphic that the Fulham admin used to show up the lineup. Like it was just like a list of players by squad number numerically. So I kind of spent about 5 minutes trying to decipher who would be playing where and what the lineup was. And when we figured that bit out, it just looked weak. And I think that's largely down to all the injuries we have at the moment. So who would have thought we would have had a midfield crisis in December? But here we are.
Yeah, you're right. And it's only going to get worse as well with the suspension that we've got, which we'll talk about just in a moment. early stages of the game, there was an early chance for Mitro, who created space with his back to goal. He dragged it just wide, and I don't think the goalkeeper was getting there. But despite looking like the better side in the early stages, it almost felt like a friendly, particularly with the atmosphere, Baldo.
Yeah, I know. You've sort of written this, sort of mentioned it, friendly, particularly with the atmosphere, basically about what's going to happen in a couple of minutes' time. Yeah, I don't think anyone really quite expected, based off the first couple of minutes, what then preceded it. Like if this had happened against QPR, week previously, or Brentford on Saturday, then I wouldn't have expected it to escalate in the way it did. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The way that it started, basically, I think took everyone by surprise with what came next, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. The game did burst into life, and 23 minutes in, Alfie Mawson's taken a heavy touch under no pressure on the edge of the Fulham penalty area. Josh Onomah did well to cover and concede a corner, but from that resulting corner, Preston scored the opening goal far too easily. It seems like we failed to learn our lesson from the weekend when we conceded easily from a cross. And I think, Statto, you pointed out in your stats at the weekend that a lot of their goals do come from set pieces.
Yeah, so when I did the stat file for Preston, I picked up that they score a lot of set-piece goals, and that instantly made me worried because, we're just shit at defending set pieces and just shit at defending in general, to be honest. And it was a pretty dead game with a dead atmosphere, and you could just tell that Preston were going to score because, especially, I think about 5 minutes before, the commentator said that Preston hadn't scored in 7 hours. It's like, oh, well, of course they're going to score now. And yeah, it was just horrific defending as always, horrific marking, and it just feels like nothing's changed.
Yeah, no, I completely say your point. Speaking of nothing changing, of course, Denis Odoi gets a ridiculous red card for a clumsy tackle. I say ridiculous on his part. This time the officials were right, in my opinion. Baldo, what did you make of that stupid challenge from Odoi?
Yeah, absolutely red card. I don't think anyone can quite sort of disagree with that. And it sort of, again, took everyone by surprise. But when you go back, the people on Sky mentioned it. This was his 11th red card in his career. And I think his last red card, I think, again, they may have mentioned it, was the playoff final against Aston Villa. And you think, where does this, clumsiness come from? Because that was a bit of a stupid decision. And the one last night was again another stupid decision. You just wonder what is going through his head when he's thinking about these sort of things, and more importantly, why he isn't more aggressive when he's challenging for headers normally.
Yeah, the most annoying thing for me as well is that we spoke about Denis Odoi on the podcast at the weekend and said how fantastic he looks at the moment, and then he goes and does something stupid like that. But we've also said previously that he's always got a mistake in him. You always feel like there's a mistake in him. So everything that he does brilliantly, he does let himself down on occasion. And I assume for a straight red card, that's going to be him out for the next 3 games. So the reshuffle was that even Cavallero went off. Joe Bryan came on for him in the left-back position. And the early game plan Scott Parker had was completely scuppered. Although a few minutes after the Odoi red, should the referee have got his red card out again when Ben Pearson went in with a 2-footed tackle on Josh Onomah, Statto?
Absolutely. I mean, when I first saw that challenge, I was like, oh, that was a bit of a heavy challenge, probably a booking. And then you see the replays, and he goes in with 2 feet studs up. That really could have broken, like, who was it on? Was it on Cavallero, the challenge?
No, it was on Onomah.
It was on Onomah, wasn't it?
Cavallero went off.
He'd gone off, hadn't he? Yeah, it could have broken his legs. I mean, That was reckless. And then obviously they did get a red card later on, which I feel the ref kind of felt like he had to give that because he missed out on that one. But yeah, that was a shocking challenge.
Yeah, well, let's come straight on to the red card then. Right on half-time, Joe Rafferty was extremely late on Joe Bryan on the halfway line. The ball wasn't really going anywhere, and all of a sudden it's 10 v 10, and it's game on, Baldo. Yeah,
oddly enough, I wouldn't have been surprised or wouldn't have been that disappointed, angry if the one on Joe Bryan had been a yellow, because I didn't think that one was as bad as the ones
No.
that had gone previously, which I know we've talked, mainly in the Bristol City review, and I'm sure countless other times before, and I'm sure we will other countless times this season. But it's just the refereeing standard in this division is just so poor, and you can't use that as an excuse. But there are some times when you just think, how differently could it have been if we had some competency, basically. But yeah, and then with the 10v10, as we talked about, that means the game opened up, and that means more space. That's really when you wanted Ivan Cavallero, and you can't really blame Scott Parker for it because he didn't know what was going to happen next. But you think in 2020, it would have been much better to have brought off a central midfielder, ideally Onoma, but I know he gets a lot of stick, and have him be replaced by Joe Bryan instead. Then you've still got your back four. You've got a midfield three of Cavallero, Johansson, and Knockaert, and you've still got the two up top in Mitrovic and Kamara. You could even put Kamara on one of the wings as well and shift Knockaert or Cavallero into the centre. So many options there, but you can't really blame Scott Parker too much because it's all reactionary, but it's still somewhat baffling the way that it all played out after that.
Yeah, very frustrating that Scott Parker didn't have his crystal ball with him. You mentioned AK-47 there, and right after half-time, we saw the two sides of AK-47 in one move. He got away from his man, left his man for dead, and then from the edge of the box, he's had a shot and put it on the M6. Immediately afterwards, Dave Nugent should have made it 2-0, but hit his volley straight at Rodak. Cue the Sky commentator saying, well, David Nugent hasn't scored in 41 games, much like Preston haven't scored in 7 hours. A few seconds later, the ball's in the back of the net. Alfie Mawson surely must have done better than that, Statto.
Yeah, it was just a bit of a mess. Rodak, he made a lot of saves in that game, by the way. He deserves a fair shout out, but he made that original save and it kind of looped up into the air, and you're Alfie Mawson, you're some big centre-back, and you're against a 34-year-old David Nugent, and you can't win a header when you need a header that's coming around onto the goal line, and you can't win it. It's very poor from him. And then there was just a simple tapping from Nugent after that. He didn't have a great game, did he, Mawson? There was no surprise that he got taken off. I know it was a tactical one to get more tackle on, but kind of says something that he was the one to get taken off rather than Ream. So yeah, it was a poor game from him.
Yeah, and just touching on the second goal, and we saw briefly gone past the first goal, but it's the same sort of point. There was a point that I was making in the Bristol City review piece that our centre backs aren't exactly the most physically dominating in the air, and that was sort of proven. That was sort of proven for both their goals. You think? I know everyone is waiting for Michael Hector to turn up as if he's going to be the knight in shining armour that will solve all our problems. But I do think he would have been excellent there because he's more physical, he's taller, he's better in the air than that. He would have done better for the first goal, and I think he would have done much better from Alfie Mawson on the second goal because, as I've said, they don't seem to be the most physically imposing of centre backs, which is what you want, and which is what we sort of became accustomed to with the likes of Breda Hangland and to an extent Zat Knight. And then you're going beyond my years, I'm sure Boisclair will sort of back me up on this. You had dominant centre halves, but we don't seem to have that anymore.
Come on, Mr. Wales, Chris Coleman, Andy Melville, Kit Simons.
I know. I wanted you to take those. I wanted you to take those frames. That was all. But the point still stands. Our centre backs just aren't. Are too focused, and this is the modern game, are too focused on starting attacks and nice passing and intricacy rather than the art of basically being physical and being defenders.
Yeah, you're completely right. And Alfie Mawson, while he's gone about his business quite quietly this season and hasn't really made any mistakes of note up until yesterday, he doesn't really look like a £15 million defender, certainly not at this level. And those two mistakes, the first one particularly under absolutely no pressure to miscontrol the ball. And then yesterday, as both of you have said, he should have won that header. He shouldn't have been out-muscled so easily. He was rightly taken off. We switched to three at the back in the 69th minute. On came Neeskens Cabano, and I thought he was probably our best player on the night for the 20 minutes he was on the pitch. The back three was Cyrus Christie, Joe Bryan and Tim Ream. Statto, I'm going to come to you. At this point in the game, we're 2-0 down. It's 10v10. We've gone three at the back. Did you still think that we could get something out of the game?
No. Whilst whilst you're watching that game and the longer it went on, you kind of sense that we weren't really in it at all. I mean, we had a lot of the ball, but we weren't doing anything with it. And then when Parker made that change, I didn't understand the tactics or anything surrounding that at all. He just kind of took off a defender to put on an attacker, and it was just a bit of a free-for-all. I'd somewhat blame Parker for that, but at the same time, it's an unusual situation to be 10v10 in a football game. You don't really see that. Obviously, he did the reactionary change to go down when he took Cavallero off because it was a reaction to going down to 10, but for then the opposite team to then go down to 10 as well, you don't normally see that. So then it's a bit of a tough one to gauge, how do you play it if you're 10v10 and 2-0 down? So it felt a bit just, like, I don't want to say YOLO, but just fuck it, go for it, take off a defender and just see what happens. And it kind of worked, but that was mainly down to Cabano having a good game and not really down to the tactics, I'd say.
I think so, but we did have some chances. We did begin to rally towards the end. Steph Joe hit the bar, then Josh Onoma sliced a low shot wide. Then Mitro went close with the outside of his boot before he finally buried one in the 81st minute after good work from Cabano. They kept on about it on Sky Baldo, but Mitrovic always scores against Preston.
He does, and I feel we've been very critical of a lot of players and Josh Onoma to begin with, but I think he needs to get a little bit of praise for this, for the work that he did in and around the box to basically start the counter-attack. I think, we criticise him quite rightly, so I think it's fair that we praise him quite rightly as well. So well done to Josh Onoma for starting that attack. I just want that a lot more often. That's all I can say about Josh Onoma. Yeah, and Mitrovic, there's only so many superlatives you can have regarding Alexander Mitrovic, because yes, he scored against Preston, but where would we be without him? I think it's something you've talked about plenty on this podcast. And where would we be without him? We'd be in dead lumber without him. So let's just thank our lucky stars that we have him. But even so, there were points yesterday where he just didn't look all that interested, and that's still a bit of an attitude problem that as I mentioned in the Birmingham reaction piece, that's just not quite the attitude I want for my captain, if I'm being honest. And he was captain yesterday in Kearney's absence.
I think about Mitro, I think everybody's so focused this season on going up, because if we don't go up, we will lose Mitrovic. That's all anybody talks about. It's not that, the club needs to go up because that's where we belong or that's where we deserve to be. It just seems to be we need to go up to keep Mitrovic. And, bigger men have come and gone before at this club. We've had Johnny Haynes at this club, for goodness sake, one of the biggest legends this country ever produced many years ago. Louis Saha, probably a more complete player than Mitrovic, who we lost, and we bounced back. We would bounce back if we didn't go up this season and Mitro left. But it's just because everybody loves the guy, I think. But there's other reasons why we should be focusing on going up, not just because we're going to lose people like Mitrovic.
I think the initial worry around that is we may lose Mitrovic, we may lose, but then we'll also lose a lot of the players that the whole buy-to-loan players we have, the Cavalleros, the Knockarts, the Harriatas, that we're only going to get on a permanent if we get promoted. And if that doesn't happen and then we lose all of those players, it's just suddenly a humongous rebuilding job that we face. And I don't know. I think
again, though, that's always the danger when you loan players.
But I just think it's more prevalent now. And I know this isn't the episode to be talking about the rights and wrongs of the Cards, but I do think they have been guilty of basically looking too far into the short term. Like when we first got up that January transfer window, getting in the loan players like Matt Targett, like Mitrovic, Norwood, if you want to go back to the summer. Then the summer we were in the Premier League, where we spent 100 million, was all done to stay up this season, or that season rather. Now, with the signings we brought in this summer just gone, it's all about getting up now with the loan players. So I think everyone, I think we're quite rightly concerned about, as Matt Hart pointed out, it's not just Mitrovic we're going to be losing. We're going to be losing a lot more players. We're basically more or less half the squad when you think about it. That's why I think everyone's sort of concerned about getting up, because we have a youngish core that we can build around now. But we're just basically going to have to go back to square one if we don't get promoted this season.
All right, well, Anthony Knockaert is one of those loan players of whom you speak. He came off right at the end of the game for Luca de la Torre. Random substitution to make that late in the game, and it was a very disappointing end to the game in actual fact, because short of, or instead of kicking on, which we should have done, having scored, Preston ended up looking like the more likely team to score, and I really thought they were going to get a third Statto.
Yeah, I mean, that Delator substitution was just pointless. I don't understand why he did that. I mean, there was we're going into added time, so there was 6 minutes, but just keep Knockaert on. I know he didn't have the best of games, but there's no point in just bringing a sub on and slowing the game down. And not even like a player you can think can get a go. It's the youngster Delator who he hasn't really done much yet and hasn't really proven himself. So that was a weird one. And yeah, towards the end, because we're playing three at the back and essentially just playing one proper centre back in Ream and having Christie and Brian as makeshift centre backs, of course Preston were going to go and get us in the counter attack. And yeah, they could have scored, if not for Rodak, to be honest. Yeah.
So bizarre lineup aside and bizarre substitutions aside, what is your Scott Parker rating this week for the defeat away at Preston, Statto?
So it wasn't great from Parker, but I'll give him the benefit that he didn't have much choice because of the injuries and suspensions we had. So 4.
4, and you've given him the benefit of the doubt as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, go on, Baldo.
That makes me feel weird because I was going to be generous and give him a 5 because again, as Matt Arthur said, there's his hands were tied somewhat with the injuries, and with Denis Adoy being sent off, there's only so much you can put on him, and again, some of the players with some of the decisions on the pitch, you have to take that away from him. With Onoma with his wayward shot, Kamara with his wayward shot, so on and so forth. But I just think some of his decisions during the game, like the Onoma substitution, like the Knockaert substitution, so on and so forth, it was his game management during the game that I think really let him down. So I'm gonna give him a 5.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'd agree with you with the 5, but he was without Harrison Reed, Harry Arter, Tom Kearney, Bobby Reed, players that are going to be certainly pushing for a start, if not, going definitely to start. So, I'm going to give him a 5, but I don't want to fall into the trap of being one of those people who, whenever we lose, getting on Scott Parker's back and then singing his name for winning. I think, we need a bit of stability, as I've said on this show for months now. And just because we've lost a couple of games in an important week, I'm not going to change my mind. So I'm still fully behind Scott Parker, but it wasn't the best from him. So I'm going to give him a 5. So the next game is at Brentford on Saturday, and we are going to preview that in just a second.
Fulham.
All right, lads. So it's our last ever trip to Griffin Park on Saturday. Our beloved rivals Brentford, the best of records against Brentford, certainly in more recent years. Statto, I'm going to come to you first. Any Brentford memories, memorable games that stick out with our horrible old rivals?
So this probably goes to show how youngish I am, but the only times I remember playing Brentford are recently when we got relegated, to be honest. And I think the first game we played would have been that League Cup game under Felix Magath, which was one of the only wins we got under him. And I just remember that because that was our first and only win under him in that dreadful season. And everyone was thinking, we're going to kick on now and get some more wins, but that didn't happen. And then I think the match last year, the 1-0, that really did stick out because, we were 1-0 for so long. And I remember I wasn't watching the game, but I was just out and about and I kept refreshing that Twitter feed, like saying, just see the full-time result, see it go. And then boom, Neil Maupay in the 93rd or 4th minute or something. So, yeah, we don't have the best of record against them in recent times, do we?
They celebrated like they won the league that day as well. It was a proper cup final for them, and they really thought that they stopped us from going up, but we showed them. Anyway, Baldo, what about you? Any Brentford memories that stick out?
Yes, one particularly for me. It was a couple of seasons ago. I think this was our second year down in the Championship. we drew them 2-2, but my abiding memory was I was invited onto the pitch at half time to do a dizzy penalty shootout.
How have you not heard about this before?
Yeah, this is news.
You must have been there. You must have seen it. But yeah, basically the whole thing was I don't know if it was quite on the penalty spot, it may have been on the edge of the 18-yard box. I'm not sure, but you had to have your hand on the ball and spin round 10 times. It was a particularly wet day, so I think I managed to slip over just the once, and then obviously spin around it 10 times and then put the ball into the net, which thankfully I managed to do. But my abiding memory of this was going to be my one and only chance to ever score at the Hammersmith end, which I'm sure is every Fulham fan's lifelong dream and everything. So I gave it the full Tom Kearney knee slide right at the Hammersmith afterwards. And because I was so disorientated, I didn't find this out until afterwards. I was about 3 inches away from hitting the post because I didn't have my bearings and angles quite right. So it could have been incredibly disastrous, but it turned out to be fantastic. So that's my abiding memory.
So you would have hit the post yourself, or your shot would have hit the post?
No, I would have hit the post in my knee slide.
Brilliant. Superb stuff. And had you had your obligatory sausage and chips beforehand? Because that could have been embarrassing as well, puking that up all over the pitch.
It could have as well, but thankfully it didn't go. And I still have basically everyone who scored that day, basically everyone did, got a signed ball by the first team. And I've still got that up on my mantelpiece. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. So I'll always have that memory with me right before I go to bed.
Fair enough.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that, but okay, good stuff. That's good memory. I'm going to go back to 1998 at Griffin Park for my memory. We had a fans friendly with Brentford before this game, and we beat them 2-0. And then we went to Griffin Park afterwards and we beat them 2-0 as well. Paul Moody scored both goals. And it was Mickey Adams who was in charge of Brentford that day. And he'd taken a lot of our promotion squad with him as well. He had Glenn Cockrell, Paul Watson, Danny Cullick. And we turned them over. Paul Moody, who Mickey Adams had signed for Fulham before he was sacked, obviously, and before Keegan and Wilkins came in. But Paul Moody was still being used. And again, I've mentioned this a few times before in recent weeks with some of my other memories, but this was the same season in which we didn't get promotion because we lost out in the playoffs to Grimsby, despite spending all that money. So good memory, though. Always good to win at Griffin Park. And let's hope we can repeat that this weekend. All right, so we're going to come on to the lineup now. And I'm going to come to you first, Statto, to ask you what you think it might be. Expect the unexpected, I guess, at the moment. Who knows what Parker's next trick's going to be?
Yeah, so I guess if Rodak can go, Christie would have to play right back, Mawson, Ream, Bryan would be the defence, and that's not out of choice, but because we kind of have to, because I don't know who else. Maybe Stephen Sess could come back, but I doubt it at this point. Midfield, it depends who's fit, to be honest. Def Joe will be a dead cert because he's been playing well and we need him. I don't want to say Onomar, but he's going to play because we have no other midfielders available. Although I say that, there is a perfectly capable Ibrahim Cisse in the reserves, and we have a midfield crisis. Quality, so there is no time like the present.
Forgotten all about him, the forgotten man.
I mean, it's a bit ridiculous that we do this midfield crisis, and either Parker doesn't like him or Cisse's got a really bad attitude, which I think is probably the latter. But
didn't he come in around about this time last year? I seem to remember him playing at Old Trafford, and then he played at Arsenal as well on New Year's Day, and he did all right.
He did. He wasn't terrible. I mean, we were pretty shit last year, but he wasn't the worst player on the pitch. And we kind of need midfielders. So, Ibra, please wake up if you're there. But no, probably, it won't be him. I would hope to see Kearney back because he was ill, whatever that means. So it'll probably be Johansson, Kearney, Onomar, and Mitro, Cavallero, AK-47 is my guess. Yeah,
you reckon Knockhart's going to be left out, do you?
Potentially, because if we do go for Kearney, Onomar, Johansson, out of Kamara, Knockhart and Cavallero, I think Knockhart is kind of third behind them at the moment.
Okay.
I would like to see
Baldo, any changes to that?
No, you've basically taken the team right out of my mouth. I'm trying to think if there is any other option other than Josh Onomah, but I really can't think of one unless the likes of Reed or Arter or maybe even Ken McDonald. If you push Stephanie Hansen slightly further up and have McDonald in the defensive midfield role, maybe that's an option. But yeah, I think you've more or less picked the team. Which is a fine team, it must be said. But there's still Josh Onomah in midfield, and that worries me very much. It depends if we get a good Josh Onomah, if we get a bad Josh Onomah. And on the evidence, we're more likely to get a bad one than a good one.
Could we give Matt O'Reilly a shout? I mean, we've heard lots of good things about him. I haven't personally seen anything amazing, but we've heard good things. Or Della Torre.
Either of them.
I don't know about him. Don't know about Luca Della Torre, but anyway, let's.
It feels like he's been at the club for ages, but he's still only 19. He's just on the bench every now and then.
Yeah, I've seen him in a few friendlies over the years, and he doesn't really stand out to me at all. He just, I would have expected him to go out on loan at least by now, but seemingly not. So. Anyway, okay, well, look, we can only hope that Bobby Reid and Harrison Reed might be available as well. I think Harry Arter is potentially more long-term, but if we can start getting some of these players back, because Denis Adoy is going to be out for this one, he's going to be out for Leeds, and he's going to be out for Luton away. So we're not going to see Denis again until whoever it is between Christmas and New Year. Is it Stoke? I can't remember, to be honest. I think it might be Stoke at home. I can't remember. Anyway, all right. Well, as I said earlier, it's the last time we will ever have to go to Griffin Park. Will either of you be sad to see the old shithole go?
Not really. I mean, it's Brentford are rivals, but I don't really care for their stadium. I don't really care for their new stadium either. So
no, it's right next to it, isn't it? Right as you come over the flyover, it's right there. What about you, Baldo?
No, I only ever went there once. Now was to see Cardiff in a pre-season friendly. Didn't really like it. It's a bit of a dump. It's being demolished about 100 years too late, in my view, and quite so. Yeah, not really bothered. I'm quite fascinated to see what the new stadium looks like because it's a new stadium, but it's a small new stadium because they have small fan base for a small club. So I'm quite fascinated to see how that works. But in terms of Griffin Park, no. The one fact that anyone ever talks about is the fact that it's got a pub on each corner. The fact that the pubs are the most fascinating thing about it really shows you how bad of a ground it is.
I don't think that's even true anymore. I think one of the pubs is closed.
Oh, boo-hoo then. I'm sure they're all going to close because everyone's going to move up. They're not going to go there every Saturday at 3:00. So they're all going to go. Oh, well, no big deal.
All or both of them are going to go. Let's put it that way, shall we? Anyway, let's look at the stats. So Fulham and Brentford have met 58 times, with Fulham winning 21 games and Brentford winning 20. So it's fairly even, although in the more latter years, Brentford have unfortunately had the better of us. We've only won one of the last 8 meetings with Brentford, and we've not won at all in the last 3 meetings either. The last time out was the 1-1 draw, which we spoke about earlier in the show. It was match 21 of the unbeaten run as we were promoted in 17-18. Mitro scored that day with a shot that flew in off the post, but Neil Maupay scored that last-minute equaliser. The other match that season at Griffin Park, we lost 3-1. I believe Denis Adoy was sent off in that game as well. The last 10 away games at Griffin Park, we have won 5 of. But the last away win we had there was in November 2016 with Sonny Aluko and Tom Kearney getting the goals that day. Between 1994 and 2014, there's been 6 meetings between the two sides. Fulham have 4 wins and 2 draws. All 4 of those wins have been at Griffin Park. Is that right?
Yeah.
6. We've met them more than 6 times. We must have met them more than 6 times.
Not between 94 and 2014.
Oh, okay. All right. Former players, or amongst the former players that have played for both Fulham and Brentford, you've got David Button, Alfie Mawson. Alfie, are you booing David Button or Alfie Mawson?
David Button, absolutely. I can't stand it.
Marcelo Trotter, Ryan Fredericks, Michael Turner, and Steve Sidwell. I'm going to come to you, Statto. Give us some Brentford stats from this season.
Yeah, so at the moment they're kind of flirting with the playoffs as they have done for the last few seasons. At the moment they're averaging 1.5 points per game, although the last 8 games they've played, that's gone up to 1.9 points per game. And likewise, on average, they score 1.5 goals per game, but in the last 8 games, it's gone up to 2.25 goals. But that is largely down to the fact that 2 games ago, they did beat Luton 7-0, so that's probably bumped up their goals scored average quite a bit. They're quite good defensively, so they've had 7 clean sheets in 20 games. Of those 20 games, they've had 9 wins. They're playing tonight, so as we're recording this is a Wednesday evening, so they'll be kicking off soon. So it could be 10 wins. Who knows? Do we know who they're playing? I can't remember. So yeah, there were 9 wins at the moment. Of those 9 wins, they've kept 6 clean sheets. Their best winning run so far was winning 3 on the bounce. Other than that, they've just kind of won twice consecutively, and then they've had the odd win here or there. So as it stands, they've lost the last game. They're playing tonight. There's no really any kind of correlation there at all. Looking at their home form quickly, because we're playing them at Griffin Park, they've won 44% of their games. They've scored 16 and conceded 6. They've only led at half time in 2 of their home games, and they've conceded 67% of their goals in the second half. So that's when we'll be looking to score. Typically, they play a 4-3-3, and 73% of their goals have come from open play, which is kind of the polar opposite to what Preston were like.
Nailed on win for Fulham then. All right, Baldo, I'm going to come to you. Who are their players to watch this season?
I think the key battle, if you want to put it this way, the main battle of the day is basically going to be Alexander Mitrovic versus Pontus Jansson, who's their big centre-back, who I really do like. I thought he was an excellent signing for them in the summer. The big Swede joined from Leeds. And again, I thought Leeds were going to miss out hugely by missing him. 1.4 interceptions a game. Pontus Jansson goes in the middle of the back 3 whenever they change to a 3-4-3, although Art seems to think they'll go 4-3-3, so he'll be in there. But Pontus Jansson basically seems to be the main man for them in defence. And then going forward, I'm probably going to have to go with Brian Mbuemo. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure I haven't. But basically, he's one of their key attackers down the flank. So whoever's on our right side, probably Cyrus Christie, is going to be a good chance for him to step up because he's very much a threat for them. 6 goals and 3 assists this season, and he's got a lot of pace on him. So it's going to be a bit of a tricky situation and a good battle. Should be another interesting one to watch. Although I still think the main battle is going to be between Jansson and Mitrovic. That should be a good old fashioned centre half v centre forward.
One thing I do want to point out very quickly. Most of their attacks, 38%, come down the right side, and given we have a weak left side, that could be a cause for concern. So that's also another thing to look out for.
Well, if Cavallero plays, he's really going to have to get back and help out then. All right, let's have a score prediction from you both then. Statto, what do you reckon? Are we going to bounce back?
I don't know if we are, to be honest. I want to say we're going to win, but I can't see it. So I'm going to go in between and 2-2 draw.
Okay. And Baldo, what about you?
Similar sort of vein, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Personally, I can't see us. I didn't see much attacking emphasis from us. Even before the red card on Tuesday night against Preston, I don't see what's going to change since then. So I can't see us being much of a threat up top. So I predict a 1-1 draw because we still can't defend properly.
Well, form goes out the window, as the old cliche says, when it comes to a London derby. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Fulham win, and we're going to see Griffin Park off in style. So 3 points for the Whites. We've got to bounce back for this one. We really have. All right, well, cheers, lads, for joining me. Statto, have Moncton got a game at the weekend?
We do. It's our last one before Christmas. We're playing the Dauphin. It's going to be a big game. The Dauphin.
Yeah.
Proper pub league.
Likely to win that? Likely to win that?
Mate, we're 7 league games unbeaten in the bounce, so we want to end the year on a high.
Come on the Moncton. Good man.
Up the greens.
All right, and Baldo, you're off for your Griswolds family vacation, or are you just going on your own to the States? Where are you off to?
Yeah, I just going on my own, going on a bit of a barnstorming tour around the middle northeast. Basically, I'm just watching a lot of ice hockey and a lot of American football. I mean a couple of people out there. One of the people from Fulham, Pittsburgh, who I'm going to be able to watch the game with. Sarah Schneid, I think her name is, on Twitter. So I'm going to be meeting up with her and I'm watching the Brentford game. So hopefully it'll be hopefully it'll be worth me getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning to go watch.
Good man. Well, send our love to Sarah. All right, lads. Well, thanks ever so much for that. Thanks to everybody for listening at home. I hope Fulham aren't spoiling your festive preparations too much. We'll be back after the Brentford match to dissect it. In the meantime, as Mickey Adams used to say, keep the faith. See you soon. Cheers.
Fulham.